Hey everybody, I'm Jack Reeder with Future Pastimes, and I'm the designer of the ECAS and Moritani expansion for the classic Dune board game. And in this video, I'm going to be talking about Caladan. And Caladan is the homeworld of House Atreides and has an accompanying homeworld card. So this is one of the variants that comes in Expansion 3, where each faction has their homeworld. You're going to use this homeworld token, and that's where you're going to put your reserves. So it's really nice, thick card stock. And you're going to put your reserves here. So Atreides, they start with 10 forces in Arrakeen, so their other 10 forces will be back on Caladan. So you start the game with your card at high threshold, and that it refers to the number of forces that you have in your reserve. So here, if the Atreides have at least 6 or up to 20 of their forces on Caladan, then they have a high threshold advantage. So that advantage is when you win a battle, you may add 1 force from your reserves to the territory or homeworld where the battle occurred, as long as you have 1 force there already. So this is going to allow Atreides to suffer another loss that they might not have wanted. Let's say, for instance, they're fighting for spice and they've got 3 forces in a territory, and they can dial 2 of those forces and then bring 1 back in from Caladan from their reserves into that territory so that they can collect more spice. And it just helps to bolster whatever territory you're on. So it's going to save you the cost of having to ship that force later on. So it's not a huge advantage by any means, but it's a nice extra little perk that the Atreides get while they're at high threshold. And that's the point, is that all of these homeworlds are going to give you some extra little thing that you can do that potentially will give you options or leverage depending on the situation and the homeworld. Now, the way this works, though, is when the Atreides dips below this number, so when they have fewer than 6 forces, you're going to flip the card over to its low threshold side. So a couple of things happen when you're at low threshold. First of all, you lose the high threshold advantage, so they can no longer do this. And then you may incur a penalty. So the Atreides, they do. And again, it's not a super harsh penalty, but you may not use your movement advantage to peek at the next spice blow. So the movement advantage, it's an unusual name for this advantage, but it's when the Atreides gets to look at the top of the spice blow and Nexus card deck to see where the next spice blow and the following game turn is going to be, or if instead there's going to be a sandworm. So they get that information before they take their turn in the shipping and movement phase, so that they can say, oh, you know, there's going to be a big spice blow in this territory, so maybe I'll go there ahead of time so that I'm already there in the next turn and can worry about getting to that spice ahead of time. So or, you know, I know that there's going to be a nexus, so maybe I don't attack the player that I want to form an alliance with, or leverage that in some way or another. But when they're at low threshold, they don't get to do that anymore. Now, homeworlds can also be attacked by other players. So when you're on your turn in shipping and movement, you can send forces to another player's homeworld and attack them there. And there's a couple of reasons why you might want to do that. If that player is at high threshold, you very likely will get them to flip to low threshold, either because they've lost forces in the battle or because you've won there. Now, beating somebody at high threshold is going to be tough, because whether you're at high or at low threshold, the native faction always gets an extra bonus. So for Atreides, when they're at high threshold, they get to add 2 to their dial in any battles there. And adding to your dial doesn't mean you're losing more forces. It just is increasing the number of your force strength. And the reason it's not just added to your force strength is because for an effect like artillery strike, where the higher dial is going to win, this would factor into that. So you'd be adding 2 to your dial in that case. So they get that, and if they're at low threshold, they still are going to add that too. So it is not easy to take over somebody's homeworld, but when they get a lot of their forces out of their reserves, either because they're well deployed on Arrakis or they have a lot of forces in the tanks, it is certainly possible to do so. So what happens if you do end up occupying Caladan? Well, you get an advantage, and that is you share the Atreides bidding advantage. So the Atreides bidding advantage is they get to see each card from the treachery deck that is going to be auctioned during the bidding phase. And that means that if you're the occupier on Caladan, you too get to see those cards. And you also will get a 2 spice income in the spice collection phase. And that is whether it's basic or advanced, you're getting income by terrorizing and taxing the locals on Caladan. So there are certainly advantages to and incentives to attack another player's homeworld and occupy them. Now, how do you become the occupier? Well, you have to win a battle there and have forces left over, at which point you are the occupier for as long as you have forces there. You are not the occupier when you first show up to attack. So even though you have forces on Caladan, because you have shipped there, unless you are the only one there. So if the Atreides have moved all of their forces off of Caladan and then you ship to it, you immediately become the occupier. You don't have to wait for the battle phase. You will have that. Of course, you won't be able to use the advantage because that happens before shipping and movement. But you'll be the occupier at the start of the next game turn. Now, players can't ship from Arrakis or from another homeworld back to their own homeworlds unless the guild is in the game. But every time you revive, your forces go to your reserves. So if you occupy Caladan, you're going to be dealing with at least 2 Atreides forces in the following turn. And if they pay 2 spice to revive another force, there's 3. And with Tleilaxu in the game, you may have 5 forces suddenly show up on there, and they will get that +2 for having a battle with you. So occupying is one thing. Maintaining an occupation of another faction's homeworld is another thing entirely, which I think makes sense. You'd always be dealing with revolutionaries and guerrillas and the populace fighting back. So it's not ever going to be easy to be an occupier. A couple other little things, and it's mentioned on both sides of the card. But if you're thinking about going to somebody's homeworld and having a laser gun shield explosion wipe out all of their reserves, it only affects a low number of forces other than those dialed in the battle. So, and it's going to be the same as the number that they're adding to their dial anyway. So yeah, you'd only kill 2. The other thing is that you cannot call a traitor or a face dancer if you're the Tleilaxu against somebody on their homeworld, although they are free to do so. So if Harkonnen are thinking, I've got all of these Atreides leaders as traitors, I'm going to go fight them on Caladan. They will not be able to use those advantages there. So save them for Arrakis or your own homeworld. So that is Caladan. Let me know in the comments if you have any questions, what you think about this, and if you've had a chance to play with the expansion and use the homeworlds. Let me know how it went, what your thoughts were after trying it out. It's another layer of depth. This is probably the most sophisticated element of Expansion 3. Everything else in there is actually very straightforward, easy to implement and understand. In my opinion, the homeworlds give you, it's one more thing you got to keep track of. Not only that you've got an extra advantage that you can deal with, but you've got to pay attention to your force numbers. And what I usually do is I'll make 2 stacks of my forces on the homeworld. One is my high threshold count, so I know when the last one of that part is removed, I know that I'm now at low threshold. So for Atreides, you're going to start with 10, half of your reserves are going to be on the planet. So you've got basically 4 guys, and then you're going to be at, after that, you're going to be at low threshold. So just an easier way. But yeah, you do have to keep track of that so that you know, oh yeah, I'm flipping this over. And then pay attention to, yeah, I can't do this anymore. And if somebody attacks me, they're going to get to share that bidding advantage. So there you have it. That's it for this video. Thanks for watching, and we will see you again soon.